Hey folks, I'm Lucy with Ballyhoo Creations, and I design dolls, puppets, and plushies, usually for an embroidery machine, but I also do sewing patterns. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to make some really cute gnomes, plushies, softies, whatever you want to call them. These are made in the hoop of an embroidery machine. It does all the stitching for you, and they come in 5 different sizes. Here's a couple of sizes here. I've even a little tiny teacup gnome made in a 4x4 hoop. He's so cute. And you can use any kind of fabric you want for the hat and the body. You need some faux fur for their beard. And the feet and nose are made of a stretch fabric. So let's jump in and talk about the materials, and then I'll show you the whole process on how these are made. They're much easier than they look. Let's talk about the materials first. You're going to need stabilizer. For the feet, you're going to need a tearaway stabilizer, but for the body and hat, you can use whatever stabilizer you like, cutaway or tearaway, either one's fine. You're going to need body and head hat fabric, and you want to cut them. There's actually a cutting diagram I'm going to show you. Your instructions come with a sheet that shows you how much fabric you need for each piece, and I'm going to do the medium one here that needs at least a 5x7 hoop. And so I've already cut my 6-inch wide by 15-inch long body fabric. That's this one here. It's nice and long, and you'll understand why that is in a little bit. And then the 11-inch wide by 11 wide by 8 long is this one here. And I'm going to fold it right sides together. And the reason I've got little arrows on here is because this is a minky fabric. It's like a velvet, and it has a pile. So if you brush it the wrong way, it looks funny. And the pile is going downwards. So my arrows that I've put on there show me the direction. And that's actually on your instructions here too. This little arrow shows you that the pile should be going downwards for the hat, and then also downwards for, this is the front of the body. So that should help you out when you're cutting out your fabrics. There's my hat and body right there. And then faux fur for the beard. You can use a short pile. This is kind of a medium pile. You could even use a long pile like this one, which looks very luxurious on a gnome. So any of those will work as long as your machine is able to stitch through it. And then we need some stretchy fabric for the skin. This is for the feet, and my little measurement sheet tells me how much that I need. And then also another small piece for the nose, and you can either just cut out a little circle, or there's even patterns in here to show you how to cut a circle. I don't cut an exact circle. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do it right now. I cheat. I don't use the pattern. I just cut the corners off of a square like this. And then when I go to hand stitch that, it works just fine. So a little, something like that, that's going to work just fine. So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Do not worry about that. And then you're also going to need a good pair of scissors, like I just used, and a pair of detail scissors, because the little feet, getting in between those little toes can be hard. So a pair of detail scissors can help with that. Also, if you're new to turning and stuffing, a pair of hemostats that have these little grippy jaws make turning very easy, much easier than trying to do it with a chopstick or something like that. I'm going to use a little bit of fur yarn for the trim around the hat. You're going to need a needle and thread. Now you can hand stitch everything to do the assembly, or you can use glue. I've also got a hot glue gun here with the detail tip, which is very useful, or you could use something like a Fabrifix glue. That works as well. Other than that, we're going to need some like fiberfill stuffing for the body, and then for the bottom, to make him sit up straight, I'm going to use these polyester plastic pellets. You don't have to use this. They are kind of expensive, but I don't recommend using rice or beans in any kind of stuffed animal or something, because they attract bugs. So I don't like doing that, and I use the plastic. You could also use like aquarium gravel, something like that. So that's all the materials you're going to need. We're going to start our stitching with the feet first, and I've already done my placement stitch onto my tearaway stabilizer that's in the hoop. And you see this little arrow right here? That tells me that the stretchy direction of the fabric needs to go in the direction of that arrow. This is for the feet. I've got 2 pieces of a stretchy skin tone fabric. It does need to be stretchy. If it's not, you're not going to be able to turn those toes right side out. And I'm just going to cover that up, again making sure the stretch is that way. 2 pieces right sides together, and that's about as hard as it is. I'll put it on the machine. And you can see the machine double stitched these little toes and feet here. So it's very strong because it's double stitched, and I'm just going to take it out of the hoop, and now we're going to carefully tear away the tearaway stabilizer. Remember, you have to use tearaway. It's too hard to turn the feet if you leave the stabilizer in. On the larger sizes, you may be able to get away with it. I just prefer to use the tearaway, and then the stretchy fabric actually will give you a nice little plump toe when you stuff it, if it's doesn't have stabilizer too. And I'm using Sulky Tear Easy, so it comes off very easy and clean. Now, I'm not going to be too picky about getting everything out of there. I'm going to leave it, and we're going to cut and trim it in a little bit. So let's go ahead and stitch the body. And I've already run the placement stitch, which is color 1 on that body, and you see it has something down here that says extra. It's actually stitched onto the stabilizer, and that means that when you take this long body fabric, and I want the arrow going down towards the word extra, I'm going to place it right side up, and my extra fabric here is going to be outside of the hoop where it says extra, so it's just going to hang over. I mean, I seriously made it as simple as I possibly could. I'm just going to kind of fold it up, just make sure that it doesn't get in the way while you're stitching, and yeah, that's good. And I don't need the tape on there. That was just for my reference. I'm going to put that on the machine. And what the machine did is it gave us a straight line, and that is our beard placement. And for the beard, let me get this out of the way, make sure I have enough room. I've got my piece of fur, and it's cut according to my instructions. It actually says that I need, for this size medium, 5-inch square, but technically I need a triangle. And that is the beard pattern page that also comes in your instructions. I'm going to use this one here, and because I make so many of these, I went ahead and made a plastic template. That's just this clear piece of plastic so that I don't have to keep cutting out on a piece of paper. So trust me, this piece of plastic is the same as the pattern here. And with the fur going downwards, I'm just going to flip it over to the back. And I'm going to use a pen just so I know what I'm doing. Just trace that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but just give yourself an idea, because we actually want our beard to be a little triangular. And the reason for that is that your feet are going to be on either side, so you want the feet to be able to show. If you use the square beard in your hoop like this, you can do that, but it's going to look a little funny because the feet are going to cover up. So I like to cut it in a triangle. It looks better. And I can barely see that. Now when you cut fur, this is important. Do not just cut normally through the pile of the fur. The fur part is called the pile. This is called the backing, and we're just going to cut the backing. Some people like to use a razor blade. I don't, because I can't control it very well. I like to use these little scissors, and I'm just cutting the back part and not the fur. So I just kind of slide it up against the backing, take little bitty snips, and we'll speed through. And you can see when I did that, I just pulled the fur away, and I still have long fur hanging off the bottom, and that's what we want. When we cut the backing, that's what we get, and that's exactly how we should do it. Okay, now when you place the beard, you don't want to place it below the line, you want to place it a little bit above, because this is the stitch line right here that's going to tack that down. So just kind of line it up, and I'm going to cover about a 1/4 inch overlap or something like that. Now, if you have a machine where the presser foot glides over, you're going to want to put a piece of topper over this, or tearaway or something like that. The extra tearaway from your feet would actually work. Just save a little scrap from that. You could do that. I have a machine where the presser foot goes up and down, and so I don't have to worry about it, but on other machines, you do. And you probably know your machine better. If the foot's going to get caught in the fur, then go ahead and cover that with the topper. So we want to flip the beard up and out of the way because we don't want it to be down here in the lower part. Just make sure that that's up and out of the way, and then it's going to sew 2 dots at the bottom. Don't be worried about this step. It's going to look like the machine's not really doing much at all, but it is. It's doing what we need. Now I'm going to take my fabric, all that extra, and I'm going to fold it upwards and cover that pre-existing part that we had, and then those little dots that we stitched are going to hold that down. Okay, it should be even with the placement box, just in case it didn't stitch down. It's right along that line on the placement. Now it's going to stitch 2 more dots a little higher up. Okay, same thing, opposite direction. Pull that fabric down. Don't pull too hard. We don't want to pull those little dots out of there. And then just put it down again. And it's going to come down and do 2 more dots at the bottom again. If you understand what it's doing, if you've already made one of these or you just get it from watching the instructions, you don't have to do all the dots. You can just do the fold and skip over this step. And then finally, we're going to put the beard down. I'm just going to tuck it in. If you have long fur like this stuff, you're going to want to get the fur into the middle, kind of like that, and then get a piece of tape and tape it down the center just to hold the fur out of the way. Because what will happen if you don't is when you stitch the side seams, your fur gets caught in the seams, and we don't want that. So the instructions show you a photo of just fold that over and then use your piece of painter's tape, embroidery tape, tape that down before you do the next step. I have a shorter pile fur. It's not going to be all over the place, so this is fine. And I'm going to go ahead and flop it back down again and pull the back side up just like that. And now it stitches the side seams. And these are double stitched also. Now you may have seen as I was stitching, my fabric got a little folded over, but in this case, this is not going to hurt anything. I'm just going to trim that away later anyway, so this is fine. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm going to go ahead and unhoop it because I need my hoop for the next step, and we're going to save this for the trimming a little bit later. All right, through the magic of YouTube, I went ahead and stitched color 1 for the hat, and it's got this cute little hat shape and the word fold right here. And so what we're going to do is take our hat fabric, and remember we had to cut it in a certain way so that the pile is going downwards. We want that to be down towards the brim of the hat, down at the bottom. So I'm going to have my fold right there on the line. Now if you want to go a little bit over and have a little bit bigger hat, that's fine too. And I do like my hat to be a little on the a little bigger and roomier. And when I say double stitch, you don't have to do anything. The machine will do a double stitch. It will go up one side, back down, so it's a strong seam. And that's all there was to it. See, it's got the hat seam here. Now be careful, you don't want to cut the wrong side of that, and we'll get to that in the next step. We're going to cut and trim all of these pieces. All right, so we've stitched the hat, the body with the beard, and the feet. Let's start with the feet because that's actually one of the harder parts to do. So I'm going to cut out the feet, and I like to trim with big scissors first. Just cut about 1/8 of an inch from where that seam ends is fine. I like to do the outside, and then I'll do the fine trimming with small scissors. Just kind of go around like this. And you want about 1/8 of an inch of extra fabric away from your seam. Okay, so there's one, and I'll speed through this part. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this up close. This thread here, we do not want to cut. That's our seam. We want to cut almost all the way up to it, like that. See how close that is? And when we clip all the way up to the seam, but don't actually cut the threads, the toes will turn out very nicely, and they won't have what's called a pinch or a pucker. And then I'm just going to trim off those little bitty triangles. I am a little fussy about that. But even with this stretchy fabric, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about the seam allowance. There's plenty of it there for a stretch fabric. And I'll just speed through this one too, do the same thing. If you do accidentally cut your threads, you can always come back with a little bit of glue or a needle and thread and fix that. All right, I've got my feet cut out. Now we're ready to do our body. And be careful, do not cut the fold down here at the bottom where that word extra is on your stabilizer. Do not cut the fold, okay? We're just going to trim away about a 1/4 inch away from both side seams. And my seam ends right here. It is kind of hard to see that, but you can see it on this side. You could cut right on that line, but I like to leave a little bit of extra, and I'll show you why in a little bit. It goes to how easy it is to close up later. You could actually cut on this line for both sides. And be careful that you don't get your feet thrown away. Put those in a safe place. I have thrown away the little parts accidentally before. And then the tearaway stabilizer, I can remove it, or you can leave your stabilizer on if you're using a cutaway. It really doesn't matter. What I do like to do, oops, placement thread, is I like to remove this part at the top, because later on when we're closing the top of the gnome, this just kind of gets in the way. So I like to take that one off. So the feet are done, the body's done. Now the hat. The hat is tricky. Do not cut the fold. This is the open side, this is the fold side, and this where it says fold, do not cut this part. It's very important. This part is the hat right here, and it can be confusing because it looks like this part could also be the hat, but this is no fold. So remember, the fold part is your hat, and then just cut, again, about 1/8 to a 1/4 inch. It doesn't really matter. Okay, this is our hat right here, and we are going to remove the stabilizer. Be careful with this step. Because of this curve, it's possible that you'll cut your hat doing this, so do take your time when you cut this out. Just remove that stabilizer because we don't need it. It was just so that the machine would move the fabric around and stitch for us. And I also like to cut a little corner off there. It is open at the top, that's on purpose, and that's so if you want to add some kind of embellishment. So just clip that off as well. Okay. We have cut out our hat, our body, and our feet, and we've also got our nose cut out. So now we're ready to turn, and for the body and the hat, just use your hands. That's super simple. Now, you may notice that the beard, it may have been stitched into the seams, or it may be hanging loose. It doesn't matter. If your beard fabric has a rough edge here that you don't like the look of, see this one, you can't even see it. It's completely hidden, which is great. But if you can see it, then just use your glue or your needle and thread to hem the part of the beard that you see. Typically, if you're using faux fur, you won't even see it like this one. The hat, you do the same thing. Just turn that right side out. You can see he's taken shape. Now the feet is where I'm going to use my hemostats. This is the 5x7 size. This is one of the harder ones. The 4x4 is even more difficult because it's tiny. But what you do is you insert the hemostat up into a toe, and then you open it up a little bit, open those jaws up, and then push the fabric into the toe, like with your finger, just a little bit. And then pinch at the top and pull it through. And I'm not going to pull it all the way out. I'm just going to pull the toe into the foot. And we do it on each one. Now, it might take you a little longer to do this. I have been doing this. I've made so many of these feet and doll hands. It goes very fast for me now. But then you just reach in and pull all the toes out. And you can also use the hemostats because it's got a very blunt nose there. Just push it up and open those up, and it really completes the foot. Look how perfect that is. Just push those seams out. And you've got a little turning tab here at the bottom on each foot. Same thing on this toe. That one didn't get pulled through. There we go. Come on. Hey, little guy, come on. There we go. Pull him through, and then open him out. Okay, the feet are done. So they are not nearly as scary as they look, especially if you have the right tool. So everything is turned. Now we are ready to start assembling. I'm going to start with the body, and I like to put pellets in the bottom to give it a nice weighted bottom. You want maybe an inch or two of pellets. I'm just going to throw those in there right about to here. I think a good rule of thumb is to have the pellets come to where the boxed corner comes to. So on this size, it's about an inch right there. And that's about where they are. And then the rest of it, you just use polyfill or whatever kind of stuffing you like to use. You could also use fabric scraps or something like that. If your fabric is stretchy, and this is minky, so it is stretchy, just be aware that you can overstretch it and make it fatter, or you can not stretch it as much and make it more kind of like tall and skinny. So just it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong way. Just do it the way you like it. Don't stuff too firmly if your fabric is stretchy. Okay, and I left a little bit of extra fabric because my seam ends there. I left a little, less than an inch extra, because I'm going to kind of show you a cheat on how to close this up. Because if you want to, you could gather that all together and use a rubber band or a zip tie. Just around like that. You could do that, but I'm actually going to show you the harder way of hand stitching because it's more secure and because I want you to know how to do that. So there's the body. Let's do the nose. And the nose, even though it is hand stitched, and I definitely prefer hand stitching on the nose. I don't like gluing them. That's a pretty big nose too. That might be too big. Let's see. I'm just going to go around in what's called a running stitch, and your instructions have a diagram how to do this. If you have a big long needle, this goes very fast. I'll show you. It's going to be a pretty big nose for him, but that's okay because you can actually mix and match the sizes of the noses and feet, or the hats, the body. You can mix and match whatever you want. It's your gnome. Okay, a little bit of stuffing goes in there. Actually, a lot. It's more than it looks. And then when you pull on that thread, it's going to close it up. So that's our nose. And if you have any wrinkles, like I have a big wrinkle there, just kind of press that out. See that? I'm going to take a few more stitches just to make sure everything's very secure. Okay, that's not going anywhere. I am going to knot my thread. And here's how you do that without taking the needle off, because I'm going to use this same needle and thread to attach it to the body. So take a stitch, leave a loop, and then take your needle and pass it through that first loop. You've made a second loop, pass it through the second loop. I do have a video that goes and shows you this very slowly, how that's done. And then I use the needle and just pull that thread, and it gives you a knot right there on the surface, if I can get the nose to stop bouncing around. Okay, so there's our nose. It's going to go right here on the seam, beard seam, right in the middle. Okay? And you just need a few tack stitches to hold that down. I'm using a red thread so that it shows up very well on video. You would want to use a thread that blends better with your fabrics. If you want to, you can press on the nose and kind of give it a different shape. The hat's going to cover up here at the top, so just get a nice little nosy curve there. And we can go ahead and knot that. I'm going to do the same stitch knot I showed you a minute ago. That's all there is to that. And that's all going to be hidden under the hat, by the way. Everything from this seam and up. And I'm going to show you the same thing on the top, just to do a running stitch. It's actually exactly the same as what we did on the nose. Just make sure that his big nose doesn't catch the thread. That happens quite a bit. Those noses are like big honking thread catchers. And you can just go take a big stitch, come out far away, and cut that, and that thread won't show. So there's the body, beard, nose. We're ready for his hat. And now I'm going to switch over to my tried and true hot glue. You could also use fabric glue. Since I'm going to be putting trim around the bottom edge, I'm not worried about this raw edge of the hat. If you're not going to use trim, you would want to probably, it depends on your fabric, but you just turn it under about 1/4 inch, and you can either glue or hand stitch that as you attach the beard. Attach the hat. So that's up to you if you want to put a hem on the hat or if you want to leave it raw edge. Like fleece doesn't, it's not very noticeable. The minky is more, but I'm going to put this and cover it up, so it's going to be fine. To put the hat on, there is a way to do it. It may seem like there's just, you put it on, but no. If you want the scrunchy, like where the hat's all scrunched up around his nose as if it fell down, then it's important that you have the hat lower in the back than in the front. That's kind of a big deal. And you also want the edges of the hat here to be like down below the nose as well. See how that works? So I'm going to glue this, just using some hot glue here, and I'm going to do a few points. You want to glue the hat on top of the nose, right around there. I've got one more point here. Now you can glue the entire edge of the hat if you want to do that, but because I'm going to be adding the trim, it's not going to be as noticeable. And then you can go ahead and pull your hat down, scrunch it down. Another option is you could put a pipe cleaner up through here and attach a little bell at the end. Let's do that. I just put the pipe cleaner through the bell and then twist it around. So now the bell is attached to the pipe cleaner, and then just poke that pipe cleaner down through the hat, and down at the bottom it should kind of spiral around the gnome's head as you push it in. And then cover it like that. And that way you can get more like scrunchy looks and things like that. If you want it to permanently scrunch down, that's another reason why I don't glue everything down, because I can sneak my glue up in there and do something so I can kind of glue that scrunch in place. So that's an option. You don't have to do it that way, but you can. See how that worked? And let's go ahead and put the trim on now. Let's see. I think I want to trim, it's kind of too triangular for my taste. I'm going to trim a little bit of that off. You don't have to, that's just, you can shape this the way you want. Just go a few inches at a time or whatever, and cover the edge of that hat. You could also do this with the beacon Fabri-Tac. Just takes a little longer to set up, but that's fine. You can use a rubber band to hold it in place or little clips. I like to attach the ends of the fur trim together as well, like that. Oh, he's cute already. And actually, you don't have to use the feet. You could just make, this is, everybody else makes gnomes this way, but I think what makes my design special is the little feet. So we're going to stuff them. And yes, this is kind of tricky. Again, I'm going to have my little hemostats. I'm going to take small balls of stuffing. You can kind of wrap it around the hemostat like that. Get out of your gnome. And stuff each toe individually. That one's not enough for that toe. You don't have to do it this way, but I like the look of the little individual toes that kind of flop over like that. So by putting stuffing in just the toes and then stuffing the rest of the foot, it leaves a little break so that the toes can bend. And like I said, you don't have to do it that way, but if you want it to look like the one you saw in the picture, this is the technique. I think that's too much for that little toe. And some of this is just like practice. The more you make these, the more you kind of get a feel for how much stuffing is going to go in there. I have made a lot of toes. Okay, I've stuffed all of the toes, and you'll notice there's 4 toes instead of 5. That's on purpose. Coming from making puppets. Puppets have 4 hands, fingers and toes, not 5. And I like that look. So now that the toes are done, I'm just going to put some more stuffing into the foot. I like to have mine kind of flat. And I'm starting to see my stitches, and this is a good time to mention, if you see a lot of stitches here, you need to kind of adjust the tension on your embroidery machine. More expensive machines typically adjust the tension for you for these types of seams, but on like the 4x4 or 5x7 machines, they might not. And so you may have very loose tension. I like a tension setting around 4, maybe even higher for a seam like this, and some machines default to something like under 3, and so it'll be too loose and you'll see too many threads here. This is not bad, and if I had used a matching thread, you wouldn't even really notice that, but I like to use contrasting thread when I do tutorials so that you can see it. There's one foot. Try to put the same amount of stuffing in the second foot so they'll look the same. And I'm not going to stuff the turning tab. So you see the shape of the foot has a little bit of a neck here. It's fatter here and skinnier. This part right here is the turning tab. And there's 2 ways you can use that. You could either glue that tab to the bottom of your gnome. By the way, make sure that the big toe is in the middle. You do not want to swap like this. It's going to look really weird. But make sure the big toe is in the middle. And you could either attach them down like this so that when he's sitting his feet are flat on the surface, or what I'm going to do, and I prefer, it's just my style, I like to tuck it in and then glue it to the front so that it's showing this way. You could also hand stitch that using a ladder stitch, and the ladder stitch diagram is in your instructions. And these little tabs can be a little tricky. Just get them in there. You don't have to worry about this being nice and rounded or anything because it's going to be at the bottom, not really visible. And a trick that you can use if you have a lot of glue showing, I like to use a pin, a large pin, and just push in like that, and that will cover up that glue. And the feet are just going to be glued on. Nice generous amount. Again, fabric glue would be better. I like to put mine in the front. You could put them on the side. That's up to you. That's just a design decision you get to make. There goes 2 little tootsies. Oh my gosh, we're all done. I didn't even realize it was going so fast. So there he is. The hat's done, body, the feet, the beard, the nose. You saw everything, right? He's even got a little bell. A lot of people like to add embellishments here. If you wanted, while you were stitching it, before you stitch the hat seam, you could put a little bit of embroidery on one side. It wouldn't be right in the center. It would be kind of off to the side, and that's, if you have your own designs, you can position that however you want. So that is an option I forgot to mention earlier, but you can put, people like to put flowers, greenery. I just like a little bell and maybe a little ribbon or a scrap of fabric around the top. It's up to you, whatever you want, but that's that. That's how we make a gnome. That's how you make a gnome. They look a lot more complicated than they really are. They go together pretty easily as long as you've got those hemostats for those little toes. It's pretty simple. I just checked my camera to see how long I have been recording this and making this. It's been 50 minutes, and that included all the video and extra explaining steps, so they really do go together pretty fast. I think I typically spend 30 to 45 minutes per gnome, depending on how big and how elaborate I'm trying to make it. So try it yourself. Go make a whole bunch of them. Use whatever fabric you want on the hat and the body. Just make sure you use something a little stretchy for the nose and the feet, and get you some nice faux fur. That's all I have on gnomes. Have a great time. Share them over in the Facebook group called Ballyhoo Inspiration and Support. I'll put a whole bunch of links down in the description box. I list a whole bunch of stuff down there. See you later, folks.